Welcome back, everybody, to the Goodwood Road and Racing podcasts here at the Festival of Speed. And we're in the Tag Heuer Drivers Club, where all the VIPs and drivers and riders come to relax, have something to eat and drink, away from all the fans who surround them for the rest of the day, of course, getting their selfies and their autographs. And with me this morning is the curator of Bernie Ecclestone's historic car collection. His name is Robert Dean. Robert, welcome.
Hi Rob, how's it going?
It's going good thus far.
You're looking suitably exhausted.
Am I? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Millions of miles walked this
yes,
weekend,
yes,
Yeah.
True. It's remarkable, isn't it, that Bernie would allow us to have so many of these fantastic cars out in the open, in the rain, bit of mud around. One of them's up in the air, upside down. Quite unusual.
Well, it is unusual. We tend not to. We used to take cars to a lot of events, but we tend not to now. Lord March rang me and said, what do you think the chances are? And once I'd stopped laughing, no, it was not too bad. I said, look, you've got to ring Mr. Eccleston, go up and see him, and sit in front of him and explain what it is you need. And he did this, and Mr. E said, yeah, let's go ahead with it. And so now we have, 6 cars on display in the paddock, and these cars haven't been seen in public for 20 years, since they were up at Donington in 95, 96. And of course the other BT52 dangling from the sculpture. It's quite an amazing thing, because I never thought we'd see anything out again, but then Mr. E is always full of surprises.
Yes. Now, just to explain, these are all BMW powered Brabhams.
Correct.
From the days of the Brabham team when it was owned and run by Bernie Ecclestone.
That's right, yeah.
So just run through with us what these 6 cars are and how they trace the history of BMW Brabham.
Well, we start out with the BT50, which is a direct relation of the 49, which was, of course, the last of the Cosworth-powered Brabhams. And the very first BT50 chassis was a 49 chassis, and they shortened it slightly to get the extra fuel in. PK drove the 50, did a lot of testing with the turbo car. Ricardo wasn't convinced to begin with, and he preferred to use the 49, so we had a very odd situation in that 1981-82 period of a 49 and a 50 racing at the same race. Yeah. And Ricardo told me earlier on today that he reckons had he kept the 49, he'd probably have won the championship again in that car. But so that was the first one. The 50 was the first one, and it was very experimental.
And I think it's right to say that these engines used to go bang quite a lot before they got them absolutely right, didn't they?
Well, they did. It was pretty much down to the ECUs. All of that ECU technology was very new. And it was what they call the old EEPROM system. So you had a little chip, and you plugged it into a machine, and then you typed in all your parameters, and then you took it out of that machine and you put it in the box in the car, and off you went, and you went testing, and if it didn't work, you had to do another one. But once they'd learnt about fuel and running really big compression, really big boost ratios, and they became more and more reliable. And by the 52, they were very good. Very good.
So what time span are we looking at here when we see these BMW Brabhams down in the paddock? So we're starting in 80?
Yeah.
Starting in 90 and going through to...
Yes, 80. And then all the way through 86. For the BT56.
Which was the end of the turbo era.
Yeah.
When we talk about Riccardo, of course, we're talking about Riccardo Patrese. Who really, is it true to say kind of that PK was very much the number one man there?
I think so. I think probably he was. But, when you look at the results, they were very much on a par in terms of results, and I think every bit as good a driver as each other. And but yeah, I think probably Nelson was the number one driver, but I think it's probably in name only, really, because they were very good each.
It was a fantastically interesting time for many, many reasons, but above all, really, for the cleverness of Gordon Murray, who designed these BMW Brabhams. There were lots of very clever things that went on in that team at that time, weren't there? Just tell us about some of them, because, I mean, as ever, it was innovation, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Gordon really, the word genius is bandied around a lot, but I think in this case you're probably safe to use it in its fullest extent. Yeah. And when you speak to Gordon and you're talking about a subject that he really likes, you can almost see the cogs going round in his head. But yeah, crikey, he was the past master at reading between the lines of the regulations, and he could see little ways of getting round things, legal ways, and just there were so many things, and really his work on downforce and aerodynamics and things at that time, were really fantastic. I mean, him and Colin Chapman really were the leaders in that field.
But he was also innovative in things like refueling and modular structures, because I mean, you were in the Brabham team at the time, so you knew about all this stuff going on, and it took the other teams, shall we say, by surprise.
Well, it did. When Gordon was designing the BT52, the BT52 came out of the 51, and the 51 had sliding skirts, and Bernie said, no, they'll never ban skirts. They'll never ban skirts. And of course, they built the cars, and then they banned skirts. And Gordon stood there, with 3 or 4 months to go and no car, because the 51 had been, and he was so cross he chopped them up with a hacksaw and with a chainsaw. So when he designed the 52, he designed things like a complete back end, so gearbox, diff, suspension, brakes, the whole thing. And we had test chassis in the factory with test engines, so we would do engine swap practices, and we would then bolt the test engine on, put the gearbox on, set the whole thing up, camber, caster, brakes, the whole thing, with all dry brake couplings on the brake lines and the clutch lines and such like, and then you would unbolt it, and that would go in a box, and that would go to the circuit. The same with engines. The engines were absolutely fitted up with everything they needed in a box. And so when they came to change an engine, they could do it really fast. And Bernie gave orders that they had to be finished by 5 o'clock at night. Whatever happened, the cars had to be finished.
Was this an overtime issue? Or?
No, it wasn't. Although we might have said that, but no. But what Bernie wanted them to do was to be finished and then walking up the pit lane, waving at all the lads in the other garages, Ferrari there with all the engine in a million pieces and dirt everywhere, and the oil and grease, and waving at all the lads going, oh, we're going for a beer now, are you finished? Oh, you're not finished. Oh, sad. And of course, that's what would happen, and they would go up the pit lane waving and laughing at all the other guys, and the Brabhams would be there with a cover on them, all finished and done. And the mechanics loved the 52 because it was so simple. Things did 2 or 3 each. Thing that Gordon designed did 2 or 3 jobs, and so it made the car very simple. The rear wing is non-adjustable, or they relied on gurney flaps, which are the little aluminium flaps at the back of the wing. So there was nothing to do with the rear wing. The front wing is mounted on a big aluminium box, and you just replace 2 little washers to give you some more downforce or less downforce. And so the dampers, you pull the pin out, you flip the top over on the top of the suspension, and you could pull the damper straight out, And so he was utterly brilliant with stuff like that, Gordon.
Also, it's true to say that the team itself, everything to do with it, was beautifully presented, wasn't it?
It was.
And this again, I think, was the influence of Mr. Ecclestone, in the sense that he just could not tolerate any mess,
No.
any untidiness. So what was the atmosphere in the team like? Was he very, this is how I want it done, this is how it's going to be done?
Yes, I mean, you knew how it should be done. When you joined, you saw how things were done, and when you parked in the car park, you always reversed into your parking space and you straightened your wheels up. You never parked crooked. You never parked nose in, because he didn't like that. And, there's all sorts of things. What can I tell you? Oh, yes, when we were sponsored by Armani, the race overalls were all made by Armani, and they were beautiful double-line things. And they had zips, pocket zips, but there was no pocket. There was just the zip, because Mr. Eccleston didn't like people wandering around with bulging pockets with their cigarettes in the pockets and bits of rag and stuff, and certainly not your hands in your pockets. But he was always, and even now he has an incredible eye for detail, and everything must be so. And what happens is that in a very short space of time, that's how you start thinking, and you look at things and you go, ooh, I'll have to change that, because he's not going to like that,
How did it come to pass that you started looking after what has become an absolutely spectacular collection of racing cars?
Well, when I worked at Brabham, I lived just across the river from Mr. Eccleston. And the consequence of that was he would ring me up at home and say, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I go, "Well, I'm going to work." No, he said, "Come to the flat first." And then I'd ring my immediate boss, George Iribar, and I'd say, "George, I've got to go to the Bolt's house." "Oh, no, we're 2 weeks from a Grand Prix. What do you mean you've got to?" "Oh, well, he wants you ring him then and tell him I can't come." And so I would do a lot of personal stuff for Bernie, and then I left to do other things, which in the great pantheon of decisions that we make in our lives was probably a decision that I wish I hadn't made. But anyway, I went off and did other things, and then I was building Caterham 7s kit cars for a friend of mine who was an ex-Brabham mechanic, Peter McEwen, and the market we were building for dropped off, and I wrote to Bernie and I said, "Do you remember me? Here's my CV, which is all sort of cars and restoring, and I'm a restorer by trade." And so he said, "Oh, you better get up to Biggin Hill and have a look at these cars that I've got." So I went up there, and I have to say that driving home after looking at that was one of the very few times I've been actually speechless. It was extraordinary, and that was it. And so I rang him and I said, "Well, it's lovely, but I said there's 2 years' work getting everything road legal and running and serviced and everything." He said, "Well, they're supposed to be all perfect." And I said, "Well, some of them have got flat tires and some of them have got no batteries. These were the road cars." Well, he said, "We'll get started then." And I said, "Okay, then." That was it, and that was how I got started.
The sad part of this story is that very few of us have ever seen any of these cars. And even now, they're a bit of a secret. Can you give us an idea of the cars he has? I mean, we know about the Brabhams, but it's a truly fantastic collection.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the top 5 racing car collections in the world. There are people that have more cars, many more cars, but you'll find that they're mostly road cars and things that you can buy, supercars and stuff. But in terms of actual racing cars, our collection spans from sort of 32 all the way up to 88. And we've got a lot of front-engine cars and obviously the Brabham collection and quite a few Ferraris and things like that.
BRM
We have a BRM V16, which is rather fabulous. I've driven that quite a lot, and nice little story about the BRM. We took some cars to Bahrain for exhibition, and Bernie rang me up and said, "Can we demonstrate 2 cars?" So I said, "Okay, then. Well, I'll get the D50 Lancia and the BRM going." Anyway, by the time I'd finished prepping the BRM, it was 9 o'clock at night, and Tony Whitaker, the track manager, he said, "You still want to test this?" And I said, "You're damn right I do. I don't want to get there in the morning and the thing won't go." So he said, "Okay then." He got the course car
at 9 o'clock.
At 9 o'clock at night. We tow started it, and off we went round the track. I was following him with all the lights going, and I'm zooming around this track in the pitch dark. Well, of course, he kept shooting ahead because I was still trying to warm the thing up, and I didn't want to go too quickly in the dark.
And this is before floodlighting in Bahrain.
Oh yeah, it's pitch dark. But one of the most amazing things, the little exhaust stick out the sides, and because it's methanol powered, the exhaust flame is blue. So when you're building the revs up, this fantastic blue corona builds around the front of the car. And then as you change gear and the revs drop, it drops and then comes back up again. And so you drive around with this sort of magical, ethereal blue corona building and contracting as you're going up through the revs. And you're getting a little heady on the methanol fumes. It's all a very peculiar and strange experience.
You also prepared the Ferrari for Fernando Alonso at the British Grand Prix, didn't you?
Yeah.
Tell us about that. I mean, that was a bit of a privilege. Not only the car, but the driver.
Well, it was great, and a lot of these modern guys don't really like the old stuff because they're always looking forward. They're always looking to the next innovation and the next thing and the next thing. And we've had people in the cars who don't really like it, and they'll go out and they'll do a little bit of a trundle round, and then that's it. But Fernando, he was fascinated by the history of the car and all of that. It's a 1951 375 Ferrari, and it was the Ascari car, Alberto Ascari car. It's a beautiful thing to drive. Center throttle, so the accelerator is in the middle, clutch is on the left, and the brake is on the right.
So coming into Stowe, you need to remember that.
You do, yeah. And it's the mantra: center throttle, center throttle, center throttle. Anyway, Fernando was amazed, and he couldn't have been more professional. I explained how to drive it. We had a long discussion about how to drive it, and techniques and all of that. And also, the thing that he liked more than anything was the term heel and toe. We all know the term heel and toe, which is when you blip on the brake and you blip the throttle. Well, that was from when the accelerator was in the middle. Because when you're on the brake pedal on the right, your ankle articulates to the left. If your foot is on the middle pedal, your ankle won't articulate. All the viewers and listeners can try it. Put their right foot down and then try and articulate their ankle either way. And he thought that was brilliant. He said, if we still had 3 pedals in our car, that's how I'd have it. He said, I'd have the accelerator in the middle, because he said, that's brilliant. Anyway, I taught him to bump start, because he'd never bump started a car before. And he loved it. He loved it. Oh, and the other thing was that I asked Mr. E if we could get 2 laps. And so he arranged to get 2 laps instead of 1. And so Fernando went round. If you see the footage, you can find it on the computer.
Yeah.
He went round, did his sort of wavy, and then he came round, and then you could see him go, right, I'm going to have a real go in this now. And he absolutely loved it. And he came in, and he said, I can't believe how powerful it is. Yeah. Now, that's somebody getting out of an 800 horsepower Formula One car into a 400 horsepower front engine car. But he loved it. And I was very pleased, I did the same for Michael Schumacher in 2001. So I showed Michael that. So I can actually claim that I've shown both Michael Schumacher and Fernando Alonso how to drive a Formula One car. Fernando won the race. Obviously, I taught him everything I know.
I think it's quite revealing about Mr. Ecclestone as well, because I mean, he's a racer. He was a racing driver just many, many, many decades ago. He's had a racing team. I mean, he's a fan, isn't he? And I think he had a big smile on his face too, didn't he?
Oh,
despite sort of millions of pounds worth of Ferrari going round.
Oh yeah. Well, you see, it's all about the professionalism, and Fernando was so professional.
Yeah.
You know, there was no ego. He didn't think, oh God, who's this, bloke that I don't know, some mechanic telling me how to drive a car. There was none of that. He listened. He did exactly what I told him. He asked questions about how to drive it and the best techniques, and it fills you with confidence. And especially when he gets out and he's had such a lot of fun, and that comes over, and Mr. E recognizes that.
Sure. Okay, let's look ahead to what's going to happen to Mr. Ecclestone's collection, because a lot of people, including me, would like it to be a museum open to the people. It would be a great legacy for him, although I don't suppose he's too interested in legacies, but anyway. Will this ever happen, do you think?
Well, I'm hoping he's going to leave it to me, but I think maybe I may be hoping.
Dream on, boy.
Dream on. Well, do you know, the problem with museums is this. You need 3 times the space that we've got, and then you got to build toilets, and then you got to build a shop and some way of selling tickets, and then you got to have staff, and then you got to have insurance, and and before you know what's happened, it's cost you £1 million to open a museum that you might get 10,000 people through a year, and in any case, it's his collection. If you had a stamp collection at home, which you enjoyed and you showed friends when they came round, you wouldn't want someone coming to your house and going, can I have, here's £5, can I come and look at your stamp collection?
Well,
and that's how it is. It's on, it's his thing, and it's his private indulgence, and
sure.
And that's how it is. And yeah, I do see what you mean, but it would just be such a huge undertaking. And
the answer is no, is it?
I think the answer is no. Was that a good no? Was that a long-winded no?
Well, it was okay, but I think we've got to a no there, haven't we? Okay, lastly, has the great man been in touch with you since these cars have come to Goodwood to see if they're all being looked after?
Oh yes. I spoke to him just before the auction, and he asked how it was all going, and I was able to tell him that there's been such an amazing amount of interest in them. And I watch people, I stand at the cars and I watch people, and they come round the corner and they stop and they go, I can't believe it. What's this, But I think he's sort of a bit bemused why anybody should take any interest in them. They're his cars, and he sort of thinks, well, they're old, why would anybody want to see them? But, I said to him that there's been such a massive amount of interest in the cars, and I've been standing there, minding them and looking after them and answering questions, and you see people come around the corner and they just stop and go, wow, look at all the Brabhams, how fantastic. And lots of ex-Brabhams people have come up and said, oh my God, I can't believe this. We had Sergio Rindland came, Gordon Murray's been there.
I think Herbie Blash came.
Riccardo Patrese came in from his run just now up the hill, and wanted to sit in all of his old cars, and so we've got some nice pictures of him sitting in all of the cars that he remembers, and so but I think when you haven't seen something for 20 years, I think it's quite a thing to have it suddenly displayed like this. And what a coup Charles pulled off by, persuading him to do it. It's great for me. I love the weekend. What's not to like? I get to be here amongst racing cars, talk, hind leg off a donkey.
Actually, you did come to the festival before, and you drove the Brabham Fan Car, which again was a huge privilege. But also, I would have thought a bit of a worry, because I suspect had you made the slightest scratch on that car, it would have been you paying for it.
Yes, he did say to me when we brought it, he said, if you crash it, don't bother coming into work on Monday. thanks very much. I said, that's no pressure there then at all. But yeah, gosh, what a thing to be able to drive that fan car. And in 2001, Charles asked us to open the course, and that was the first time that car had run in public since 1978, and the Nielsen Trophy when Piquet drove it. Oh, and I met Niki Lauda, and I said, how does that ever happen? I get to meet Niki Lauda and ask him for advice about driving the Brabham Fan Car. I mean, what a surreal exchange that was. Anyway, he said to me, you must drive with your foot flat.
To get the downforce working.
To get the downforce. So he said, you drive it like a front-wheel drive car. You come into the corner, and instead with a rear-wheel drive, you're on the brakes, change down, and start feeding the power in at the apex and zoom out the other side. And he said, no, you come into the corner as fast as you possibly can, change down, don't bother braking. And he said, you change down and you nail it, and you get as many revs as you can. And he said, that thing will go round the corner. And I think if Niki Lauda tells you that, then you have to pretty much believe him, don't you? And on the Sunday, having taken things having been building up on the Sunday, I thought, well, I might just give it a little bit more of a squirt. And he was right. Oh my goodness, but with that, it has a pitot tube on the front of the fan car, which is like an airspeed indicator. And at 40 knots, you have full downforce. And at full downforce, it's sucking itself to the ground with 1.5 G of suck. And it's like a scale electric car. It's just awesome to drive.
It was a great idea, which is why it was instantly banned.
Well, was it instantly banned? Well, why was it instantly banned? That's the question. And the answer is that it was a complicated system, worked extremely well. In fact, Gordon had already laid down drawings for a BT47, which had 2 smaller fans and full vortex generating downforce skirts and all that. But in the end, Bernie was the reality, really, probably, from the way I see it, was that Bernie was trying to get everybody to sign up to FOCA. And everybody went to him and said, if you continue to run that thing and you're certain going to win the championship with it, there was no doubt it won at Anderstorp by 32 seconds, and Mario Andretti blew his Lotus up trying to keep up with it. And I think Bernie said, they said, well, we're certainly not going to sign up to FOCA if you carry on running that. But as, of course, the double-edged Ecclestone sword swung back, and he said, well, I will allow it to be banned, assuming that you sign up to FOCA. And, of course, what happened? They all signed up to FOCA, and the fan car was not used again, and use of fans was not used. But it was completely legal. It was not banned because it was illegal. It was absolutely legal. And completely within the rules, and the car was allowed to keep its points.
It's just yet another genius idea from Gordon Murray, is what it was.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you so much for bringing the cars to Goodwood. It's been a fantastic sight for me as well as everybody else. Well done, and thank you to Mr. Ecclestone. And what we hope is you'll be back another year with some more of his amazing machinery.
Well, you're very welcome. It's been wonderful for me, to have these cars out, and it was brilliant that Bernie agreed to it and that Charles managed to persuade him. And it's been, Goodwood is always fabulous, but to be here with things like this, when we bring stuff and it hasn't been on public display for 20 years, it just adds a little frisson of fabulousness to it. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk. I hope your listeners enjoyed it.